big shopping bags to carry all the candy we were going to trick-or-treat. And I took a can of that, silly string, that stuff that the string pours out of the can, and I tucked that under my costume just in case we had to string somebody. So Bill and I stepped outside, and it was a typical Ohio October. The ground was crunchy hard. It's a kind of cold that clings to your skin. But we didn't care. We were so excited. And we usually started trick-or-treating across the street at Mrs. Dawson's house. But it was dark. Her house was dark. And Bill said, I guess she isn't home, Bob. We'll have to skip her. So we started trick-or-treating down the street and went several blocks down collecting candy and then came back. And by the time we got back, our bags were really bulging with candy. We were very happy. And we were about to go back to the house, and I looked across the street, and there was a light on in Mrs. Dawson's front window. I said, I guess she's home, Bill. Let's go over there. So we crossed the street, and as we went up her driveway, I could see that it wasn't a light. It was this fiery orange jack-o'-lantern, and it had a huge, jagged grin on its face. We went up to her front stoop, and I knocked on the door, and we waited, she didn't come. So I rang the bell, and I knocked again, she didn't come to the door. Bill said, she's in there, Bob, go ahead, string her. So I took the can of silly string out, and I raised it to her door, and then I froze. I just stopped. Because in the front window, the jack-o'-lantern had changed. It wasn't fiery yellow anymore. It was this bright, angry red. And the jack-o'-lantern had this ugly scowl on its face. And I dropped the can, and Bill and I started running down the driveway. We were halfway down the drive when the door came open, and Mrs. Dawson came out. I remember she was wearing a gray nightgown. I remember her nightgown fluttering in the wind. And she said, why did you wake me? Why did you wake me? I said, I'm sorry, Mrs. Dawson. I didn't know. Could I ask you one question? How did you do that with your jack-o'-lantern? And she said, jack-o'-lantern? I don't have a jack-o'-lantern. And I looked in the front window, and it was completely black. So Bill and I ran into the house, and we went up to our room, and we dumped out all the candy on the floor, and we started dividing. We didn't say another word about it. We never said a word about it. But the next morning, I woke up, and I thought, I really should go across the street and apologize to Mrs. Dawson for waking her up. So I got dressed for school, and I had breakfast, and I went across the street, and there was a big truck in Mrs. Dawson's driveway, and these workers going in and out of her house. And I went up to one of the workers, and I said, what's going on? And he said, I guess you're getting new neighbors, kid. And I said, why? What do you mean? He said, Mrs. Dawson died last week.